Why is it so damn hard for me to stay consistent? If you've noticed that your consistency around your goals falls off from Monday to Friday because you go from I've got this to I don't know what the hell's happening, you're not alone, and this is the video for you. Here's the question for today's conversation and context. So the question first, I start strong every Monday and fall off by Wednesday. How do I actually stay consistent? If we can look back at the chain of events that leads into this, and the context did kind of do that for us, but I do want you to think on a personal level, where does the chain of events start for you? So if Monday is that fresh start and Wednesday, now the implosion happens, what's the first chink in the chain? What's the first thing that starts to go wrong? What's the first thing that starts to tip you off into the wrong direction? Or do you know what that is? Because if you don't know what that is, going into this next week or going into the next round of things, it's going to be super helpful. Not so much important, but super helpful to recognize what's the first piece to the puzzle. What's the first chain to break? Or what's the first piece of hay that's going to just be too much? That was a dumb analogy at the very end because I started to lose it in my head. So thanks for bearing with me for that 30 seconds of confusion. But really looking back and seeing what the first thing that starts to tick this all off is can be really eye-opening. Because it might not be that you need to get rid of or somehow find a way to maneuver or remove that thing in particular. It's more or less figuring out, how do I respond to that thing? What's my next reaction? What's my next response to that thing? Maybe to prevent or at least to delay the onset of what this is describing, where that Wednesday is just like, now all the things suck. Let's start there first. Identifying what's going on is like the first piece. What's the first thing that caused the chink in the chain? The next piece is like, what is my given response? And you might not know what that is right now or at all. So going to the drawing board and finding out what are things that help me ground myself in the moment, dig maybe a little bit deeper on the direction that I tend to take, or at least see what that response is and how can I adjust that thing. The response is going to be the next piece. So identify it first, then figure out what your response can be. Let's take for an example on that piece, because that can be a little bit confusing. Let's say that you've identified the first piece where you said work deadline. Great. Work deadlines are consistent. They come in all the time. They're always different deadlines, but they're there. Okay. What's your response to those things? That's the next piece. It's the defeated feeling, then it's hard to give myself grace or not spiral. Not sure if that makes sense. The feeling makes sense, and the not giving yourself the allowance to go through that makes sense. But the response is the spiraling piece that we're going to figure out how to navigate. So I would, and this might be wrong, okay? So take this with a grain of salt. Always take most things I say with a grain of salt. Do your own introspection, do your own looking, and question it. Because I don't want to just say, this is word, this is what we do, blah, blah, blah. That's not true. Sometimes I'll say things that are stupid that I need you guys to fact check on me, okay? Let's put that plainly. But I'm going to say the giving grace is not the response. The giving grace is the helpful thing, but it's not a response to avoid the spiral. So when given a deadline, because we're going to roll with that for a second, when giving a work deadline, if that is the first chink in the chain, what's the response to it outside of, I give myself a bit of grace in this moment? That could be a multitude of things. First and foremost, it matters much more about what responses you think would be there versus what I think would be there. Pure stress is still the same thing. Like, that is the next layer onto it. Like, it's taking what's happened and just amplifying it more. Like, I have a deadline. Now I don't feel good. And I'm still stressed. Those things are still true. So it's not like you're adding in a new layer to this. It's just, it's amplifying it. Like, the work deadline is one thing, then it's defeated, now it's stressful. It was stressful since they gave you the work deadline. It's like, it's all compounding stuff. So it's not helping with the response yet, but we do need to find a response to the situation. So there's a multitude of different ways that you can go about this. Several probably do not apply to basically anybody, but I'm going to go off of the things that I would make sense of in my head. Again, contextualize this for your situation. If you're going through a work deadline and you recognize that you have a defeated feeling, and then there's just a mass amount of stress that kicks in, how do we approach the next step? Do you focus on it at work? Do you focus on it at home? Do you focus on it on the drive home? At what point do we cause an intervention to happen? Ideally, we figure out how to do it in the moment. But sometimes that's not possible. So I'm going to kind of cast aside the idea of like an ideal situation at the moment, Because if this is a current problem that you're dealing with or someone around you dealing with, you probably don't have the capacity to handle it in the moment. We need to figure out what to do maybe a little bit later, and then kind of reverse engineer that stuff to be an in the moment response, not an after the moment thought response. So that's again another piece where it's like kind of pick your level on this. Finding outlets, finding things that help ground you, finding things that maybe bring you some level of joy. That can look like a lot of things. I'm just gonna say that could, like, for me, I love going to play my drums. So on really stressful times, if I end up like if somebody finds me drumming more often, pretty good indicator that I'm kind of stressed out. I love to play my drums, but most times I don't perceive that I have more time in the moment to go play. But when I'm really stressed out, I tend to find the time to go play because I need the hit crap and just say, like, I'm letting loose and going hard. That's my outlet, or it can be one of my outlets. It used to also be exercise. Now it is not the case anymore. It's kind of weird. That does not do the same thing that it used to do for me. And that might be one of those things that kind of like acts as an aha moment, maybe for myself or maybe for you, where it's sometimes this is why it's important to have multiple responses to stress or hard situations, because sometimes things don't go the way you think they're going to go in terms of your response. It becomes, how do we plan for when life does take a 2x4 and smack you in the face? What do we do? The best things that we can figure out is make a plan for when we are most peak stressed, when things are not going our way, when we know that time is going to be super limited, and that's about it. Like, we can only do so much. So planning for those situations helps us navigate that stuff in the moment. But we have to remember, we have to plan first off. Have like an owner's manual for yourself, where it's like, I flip to this page. When shit's getting real, this is what I do. And that might mean shorter workouts. Maybe it means mixing up workouts entirely, because doing what you have been does not feel as good, and you don't like the responses, so you switch gears. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's in that moment you plan, instead of maybe hypothetical 3 days a week of workout, maybe I shift to one, and then the rest I go out. I walk, more specifically. I go bowling, for example. I don't know, swimming, random. Again, none of this is true for most people. So figure out what works for you, but develop some level of an owner's manual for yourself so that when things do start to go awry, because they will, you have something to go off of rather than flying in blind all the time. The cool piece, and I say this very loosely, the cool piece about these situations where it's like, it's almost predictable. Monday this happens, Wednesday I drop off. If you can identify, again, where that chink is, you figured out for the most part what kind of acts as your triggers, or the things that set you off and spiral you. Then you figure out, how do I respond? Then you figure out, okay, what's my game plan for when this happens? Because if this is something that's recurring for you, as this question kind of sounds, then you have to figure out, how do I navigate this, knowing this is something that happens a lot. So this isn't just a one-off. This isn't just something that happens once every quarter of the year or once every month. It might be something that's regular or even semi-regular for you. So figuring out how to truly navigate it that fits your life and your situation and just you as a whole, the best, is the only solution that really makes sense and matters. Because otherwise, we're just shooting fish in a barrel. This sounds not quite predictable, but pretty close to it. If your language is, this has to be perfect, this is my perfect meal, this is the perfect meal plan, this is the ideal situation I need to be in. If it sounds almost too good to be true type of language, we need to find ways to reframe it. That was the word I was looking for, is reframe. Reframe your language that you're giving yourself. There is no such thing as the perfect stuff of anything. Even though, like, believe me, I used to live in the perfection mindset. I wouldn't do crap unless it was like, this is good enough for me to share. And then I would second guess it the whole way. And then I'd feel terrible about it the next steps. There is nothing that can be perfect. There is stuff that can be a little bit more improved, but nothing can be perfect, period. So instead of saying, I'm going all in, perfect meals, this is great, this is ideal, blah, 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 reframe things. Put it in a context that says, right now, this is the best right next move for me. Not the perfect next move. It's the best right next step, period. Because if that's the language, then it's not going to be like, oh man, I completely jacked that up. It becomes like, okay, that right next move didn't work. What's the next right move based off of this situation now? It's always, how can I be better in this situation, in this position I'm taking, and then acting on that. By Wednesday, one thing goes sideways, a work deadline, tiring. Okay, that was the context that we nailed, I think, or at least navigated okay. Has done this enough times. They're starting to wonder if something's wrong with them. There's that repetitive side where it's like, it's almost becoming like you can figure out that this is going to happen. The real problem isn't willpower. It's an all or nothing approach. And then like ending it there. The all or nothing mindset. All or nothing mindset. No, the all or nothing mindset around most of these things. It how do I phrase this in a way that makes any level of sense? The all or nothing mindset will hold you back more than anything else will. You don't have to go 100% on everything. You don't have to be perfect, again, on everything. Find the next right move rather than I need to have this all or nothing. I got to get all of it done. And if that means you focus purely on nutrition right now, good. If that means workouts right now, good. If that means self-care and management of stress, based off of this comment and question, good. Find the next right move for you, and that's the way to approach this. You got a question for the next Q&A? Drop it in the comments. If you want deeper support, consider subscribing or joining our coaching community where we host multiple live calls every week. The link's in the description. And if this helped you in any way, please share it with someone who's also working on their health too. Now remember to stay active, eat mindfully, think positive thoughts, and let's get after it.